You sit at opposite ends of the couch, the same couch where you used to curl up together during movies. Now there's a careful space between you, not planned, not discussed, just there. The television drones on. You're both watching but not really seeing, not really present. When did you stop reaching for each other without thinking? When did love become something you remember instead of something you feel? And what if all that's missing isn't more words, but one forgotten touch? Everything changed when Eleanor decided to stay standing behind Harold's chair for 5 quiet minutes and simply rested her hand on his shoulder. After 43 years of marriage, is this just what love looks like now? Comfortable distance? Or is there still a way back to the couple who couldn't keep their hands off each other? The question sits between you like that careful space on the couch. Some truths don't need to be spoken to be felt. Eleanor sits across from me in the coffee shop, her wedding ring catching the afternoon light. Married 45 years, grandmother to 6, still beautiful in the way women become when they've been loved well for decades. But her eyes carry something heavy. "We love each other," she says, and the words sound like she's trying to convince herself. God knows we love each other, but we've become roommates, polite roommates who share a bed and split the bills. I watch her fidget with her coffee cup, the gesture of a woman searching for words that don't exist yet. Harold still opens doors for me, still says please and thank you. We have our routines, our inside jokes, our comfortable silences. But when was the last time he looked at me, really looked at me, like he was seeing me instead of just recognizing me? Eleanor's voice drops to a whisper. When was the last time I looked at him that way? This is the conversation happening in living rooms across the country. Couples who've built beautiful lives together, raised children, weathered storms, celebrated victories. But somewhere along the way, they stopped seeing each other as lovers and started seeing each other as familiar. We used to have a language, Eleanor continues, not words, something deeper, the way he'd brush my shoulder when he passed behind my chair, how I'd squeeze his hand twice during grace, our secret code for I love you, the way we'd find each other's eyes across a crowded room at parties. That language, the wordless vocabulary of touch, gesture, presence, it's the first casualty of long marriage. Not because it stops working, but because we stop speaking it. We assume the other person knows. We take the connection for granted. We start loving in shorthand instead of full sentences. I miss being touched without purpose, Eleanor says, and the honesty in her voice is startling. Not sexual touch, though I miss that too. Just casual connection. His hand on my back when I'm washing dishes, my fingers combing through his hair while he reads. Touch that says, I'm here, instead of touch that wants something. The tragedy isn't that Eleanor and Harold have fallen out of love. It's that they've forgotten how to speak love in the language their bodies understand. They're trying to maintain intimacy through words and gestures, when what they really need is presence. Connection. The kind of touch that says, you're still the person I choose, without saying anything at all. We've become efficient, Eleanor admits. We communicate perfectly about schedules and appointments and who's picking up groceries. But we've stopped communicating about us, about how it feels to share this life, about whether we still like what we see when we look at each other. The silence stretches between us, and I can see Eleanor wrestling with something deeper. I think, she says finally, we've forgotten that loving someone isn't just about staying committed to them. It's about staying curious about them. And curiosity requires attention. The kind of attention that happens in silence, in touch, in the spaces between words. Eleanor and Harold hadn't lost their love. They'd lost their fluency in the language that love speaks best. Presence without agenda, touch without purpose, attention without distraction. But languages can be relearned, even after 45 years. It started with coffee and ended with everything. Not dramatic everything. Eleanor and Harold weren't people for grand gestures or tearful revelations. Quiet everything, the kind that changes how you occupy the same space as another person. I was making coffee Tuesday morning, Eleanor told me 2 weeks later. Harold was reading his paper at the table like always. But instead of taking my cup to the living room like I usually do, I just stayed, stood behind his chair with my coffee and put my hand on his shoulder. Harold looked up, surprised, not annoyed, surprised, like he'd forgotten Eleanor was the kind of person who touched him casually. I didn't say anything, Eleanor continued, just let my hand rest there while I drank my coffee, felt his warmth through his shirt, noticed how his hair curls at the base of his neck, something I'd stopped seeing years ago. 5 minutes, that's all it was. Eleanor standing behind Harold's chair, her hand on his shoulder, both of them drinking their morning coffee in silence. No conversation about their day or the weather or what needed to be done, just presence. When I moved my hand, Eleanor said, he caught it. Just for a second, squeezed my fingers. Still didn't say anything, but his eyes... She pauses, remembering. His eyes looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time in months. That evening, Harold did something he hadn't done in years. While Eleanor was loading the dishwasher, he came up behind her and rested his chin on her shoulder. Not to ask for anything, not to start a conversation, just to be close. We stood like that for maybe 3 minutes, Eleanor said. Me loading dishes, him just there. It was the most intimate we'd been in years, and we didn't say a word. The next morning, Eleanor found herself making coffee and gravitating toward Harold's chair again. This time, he reached for her hand before she'd even put it on his shoulder. Drew her around to sit on his lap while he finished reading. 67 years old, Eleanor laughed, sitting on my husband's lap like I'm 25. But it didn't feel silly, it felt right, like we were remembering how to be in the same space without agenda. Week 2, their wordless conversations expanded. Harold started brushing Eleanor's hair while she watched the evening news. Eleanor started tracing circles on Harold's back while he fell asleep. Small touches, casual intimacy, the language they'd forgotten they knew how to speak. The funny thing, Eleanor said, is that we started talking more too. Real talking. About things that mattered. But it wasn't the talking that fixed us. It was the touching. The being present with each other without trying to solve anything, or plan anything, or fix anything. Their friends started noticing. You two seem different, their daughter said during Sunday dinner. More connected. Connected, that was exactly the word. Eleanor and Harold had rediscovered that love isn't just commitment or compatibility or shared history. It's connection, the daily choice to be present with another person in ways that don't require words. We realized, Eleanor said, that we'd been living parallel lives in the same house. We were together, but we weren't with each other. Now we're with each other, and it changes everything. The 5-minute conversation that happened without words had become a daily practice. Not scheduled, not forced, but natural. The return of a language they'd never really lost, just forgotten how to speak. 3 months into their wordless conversations, Eleanor and Harold experienced something they hadn't felt in years. They missed each other when they were in different rooms. I'd be in the kitchen, Eleanor told me, and I'd feel pulled toward wherever Harold was, not because I needed something from him, but because I wanted to be near him. When did I stop wanting to be near my own husband? Harold started finding excuses to be in the same room as Eleanor, not hovering, not following, just gravitating toward her presence like he was drawn by something magnetic. We started sitting closer on the couch again, Eleanor said. Not planned, just natural. His hand would find mine during movies. My shoulder would find his during the news. Like our bodies remembered how to be together even when our minds had forgotten. Their bedroom transformed from a place where 2 people slept to a place where 2 people connected. Not necessarily sexually, though that had begun to return too, but intimately. Harold started reading in bed so he could be near Eleanor while she fell asleep. Eleanor started going to bed at the same time as Harold instead of staying up to finish dishes or catch up on emails. "We started sleeping closer," Eleanor admitted, and her cheeks actually blushed. Not cuddling like teenagers, but touching. His foot against mine, his hand on my hip, my fingers resting on his chest, like we were anchoring each other. The language they'd rediscovered began to spill into every part of their day. Harold started kissing Eleanor goodbye in the mornings, not the quick peck of obligation, but real kisses that lasted long enough to remember why they'd fallen in love 45 years ago. Eleanor started greeting Harold when he came home from errands. Not just, "How was the store?" but getting up from what she was doing, going to him, touching his face, asking with her presence, "How are you?" "I'm glad you're back." "Our friends started commenting," Eleanor said. "Sarah said we were acting like newlyweds, but we weren't trying to recapture young love. We were discovering what mature love could look like when we actually paid attention to each other." Their intimacy deepened in ways that surprised them both. Not just physical intimacy, though their physical connection had been reborn, but emotional intimacy. The kind that comes from being truly present with another person day after day. "I started noticing things about Harold I'd stopped seeing," Eleanor said. "The way his eyes crinkle when he's genuinely amused. How he hums under his breath when he's content. The careful way he handles things he loves. I'd been living with this man for decades, but I'd stopped really seeing him." Harold began noticing Eleanor too. Her laugh, the real one, not the polite one she used in public. The way she moved through their home like she was dancing with the furniture. How she lit up when she talked about their grandchildren. "We fell in like again," Eleanor said simply. "Not just love. We'd never stopped loving each other. But like, we started enjoying each other's company instead of just tolerating it." The couple who had become roommates had chosen to become lovers again. Not through grand romantic gestures or expensive trips or marriage counseling, but through the simple revolutionary act of being present with each other without words. "People ask us what changed," Eleanor said. "They want some big revelation, some breakthrough moment, but it was simpler than that. We just remembered that being married to someone means choosing to be with them, not just near them. And with is something you do with your body, your presence, your attention, not just your words." The mirror in their bedroom reflected two people who had found their way back to each other, not by going backward, but by going deeper, into the language that lovers speak, when they remember they're still choosing each other. At 67 and 70, Eleanor said, "We're not trying to be young again. We're trying to be old together in a way that still feels alive, still feels chosen, still feels like love instead of just habit." Your love doesn't need more words. It needs more presence, more touch without agenda, more moments when you choose to be with each other instead of just near each other. You don't need counseling or courses or complicated communication techniques. You need 5 minutes of standing behind their chair with your hand on their shoulder. 5 minutes of sitting closer on the couch. 5 minutes of touching like you're glad they're there. The language of love at 60 isn't the same as the language of love at 20. It's deeper, quieter, more intentional, but it still speaks in touch, in presence, in the choice to be curious about the person you've promised to love forever. Your marriage doesn't need fixing, it needs remembering. Remembering that you chose this person and you can choose them again. Every day, without saying a word. Love doesn't need to shout. It only needs to be remembered with a touch, a glance, a presence that says, "I'm still here and I'm still choosing you." Before we dive in, let me ask you something simple, friend. Where are you watching this from? Drop it in the comments. We may be scattered by distance, but we are walking this road together, still here, still breathing, still worth it. Tonight, instead of sitting in your usual spot, sit close enough to touch. Let your hand find theirs during the evening news. Stand behind their chair while they read and rest your hand on their shoulder. If this reminded you of a couple who's forgotten how to speak the wordless language of love, share this with them. Some conversations are too important for words. We're all learning how to love each other across the years. You're still here, and you're not done.